Miller residence, a property managed by the Indianapolis Museum of Art. It's located in Columbus, Indiana. And joining me is Mark Zalonis.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you. This is just such a special place and a real treat to be able to share it with our viewers.
Sure, it's a wonderful place that so many folks have all of a sudden had a chance to visit. It's been a private residence, as you said, for the last 50 some odd years, and all of a sudden it's available to be seen. It's a real treasure.
And it's so unique because we have these three really renowned designers in their fields coming together. Tell us a bit
and at
about
the peak
that.
of their careers too. That's the neat thing. Saarinen, a Finnish-born architect, was hired by Mr. Miller to come and design his own residence after having done some projects here in the city. And he brought along Alexander Gerard to do the interior furnishings. And then they very shortly thereafter brought in Dan Kiley, a landscape architect from New England, to come and do a landscape that befits this particular house.
And it's just wonderful to see these three, artists in their field come together. And the style of the house and the style of the landscape, very modernist. It was 1955, right?
Right. And so it very much fits that period, sort of a new view on America and design at that time. And Mr. Miller was so instrumental in bringing architects of renown to Columbus to design churches, banks, public facilities of all kinds.
Very special for this small town.
Very special. So everyone was curious as to know who would design his own home. And I think he chose the best of the best for that.
Now this style of architecture, we look around, very simple forms and lines, kind of that Mies van der Rohe
Exactly,
style.
and it was actually based in large part on Mies van der Rohe's Barcelona pavilion, or the German pavilion in Barcelona in 1929. A lot of similarities to that particular facility, this almost like a crystal box sitting on the pedestal above the Flat Rock River. And it works very, very nicely. I'd say pavilion is a real good way to think about it. But it's very much a home too, because the Millers lived here with their 5 children. So it wasn't just a showplace, it really was their house.
Yeah, very livable. And when Kiley came on board to do the landscape, he took those forms and those lines and carried them out into the landscape.
Exactly, and I think that's why he was chosen. Saarinen had worked with him to design the arch in St. Louis. He also worked at Dulles Airport, and I think he knew that he could do that to carry forth the design of the house and these views from the large windows that were right behind us here, looking out into that landscape and integrate the landscape with the house. So whether you're out here where we are looking in, it's a gorgeous view, but when you're on the inside looking out, it's truly incredible.
Yeah, it's very integrated. I felt when I was inside that the majority of the scenery, I guess, the color was coming in from outside through the big windows, and we have all this greenery.
Right.
It's interesting when you look around, there's not specifically designed views necessarily.
No, and actually Mr. Kiley designed almost the opposite of that. He wanted really to have forms and shapes and volumes created by the hedges, by the hardscape that we're walking on now, by the shapes of trees to form volumes. And as he said many times, it's all about the geometry. And there's barely a circular or a curving form on this property. It's all very angular. And he wanted you to walk into these spaces, and rather than having a prescribed view or path through the garden, he wanted you to find your own way. But it was his own way of designing. It was part of that modernist technique too.
And in this, I kind of think of it like space, organizing space as a series of spaces, and then again those spaces relate back to the house.
Right, and the house itself was designed on a grid pattern. There are 9 separate grids within the house, and Kiley's landscape reflects that. He sort of took that out and sort of stretched it out into the landscape. This bed of ivy that surrounds us here was mimicking the podium of terrazzo that's we were just walking on. And he sort of said, well, let me extend that out another 20 feet or so, and from there into the landscape. And just an ingenious thing. I've heard a writer talk about this as being a moat around this house, and it's a moat of green, but it works very well the same way.
It does. Something I find really interesting here, we have this space in front of, so beyond the moat.
Right,
here,
beyond the moat.
It's in LA, and normally we see in LA with a view, or maybe the house leading up to the home.
That's right.
With a strong view at the end, but this is going perpendicular
That's
to
right.
the home.
That's right. Very unusual. I can't think of another space where another property where that happens. But what Mr. Kiley was thinking of was rather than direct your view, as you were saying, to one end or the other with a piece of sculpture, a fountain, or the house, he wanted this to be another space that you would look through. So when you're in the house, in the conversation pit, or just coming out here to the podium looking out this way, he considered the trunks of these honey locust trees to be columns. Green columns to be sure, but columns that you would look through and then look off to the great expanse of lawn that leads down to the Flat Rock River. And it just catches everybody by surprise.
Yes, it's not what you expect.
No, not at all.
And
He's framing your view in a way that you don't even suspect it. It just sort of happens that way, but it's a great vista, as you've seen.
Well, Mark, these grand vistas and the very intimate places and the way they tie back into the house and the architecture, it's just such a very special place, and significantly so that it's become a national
historic landmark.
Yeah,
there aren't that many in the country, and we're very fortunate that this was declared that, because it's the highest honor that the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior can bestow on a property. And this is so unusual that it was done when the family was still living here. That's how important and significant this property is. The first time and the only time that's ever happened.
And it's wonderful that the family has given this gift to the art museum and the public so that we all could come and enjoy this.
That's right. Rather than holding it on to themselves or selling it privately, it was given to us so that we could in fact share it with the public who have been coming in droves since we opened.
Well, thank you so much for sharing it with us today.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.